All right. Welcome to the show. This is the Frankly Fantasy Football Podcast. We are your hosts, Frankie and Johnny. Welcome to the semifinals, Week 16. Frankie, my brother.
Here we are, John. We made it, baby. We are here. We are queer, and we are ready to rock and roll, baby. Well, maybe not queer, but, we're goofy. Either way.
Yes, queer in the strange sense. It's the old definition of queer.
Yeah.
Sorry. Try not to get us canceled. Okay, we made it through the whole season, Frank. That'd be really helpful, man.
Sorry.
All right. Welcome to the show, everybody. Frankie, how are we looking? How's Frankly Fantasy representing here? Are you going to represent us in some titles this year or what, buddy?
John, I hope I'm carrying us, baby. Right now, I'm still in two leagues. Still feeling pretty damn good, right? I made it to the semis in our big 14-man league, so I'm playing against the juggernaut of our cousin Dennis McGlone. So we'll see what the guys can do, man. But in the other league of Extraordinary Gentlemen, we put together one hell of a high roller type of league, and I am in the semis there, and it's gonna be another battle, man. Tyler Ross, shout out to you, man. My Lord, did he put up some serious points last week? So, John, I'm gonna hope I hold it down for you, brother. Let me ask you, what happened, man? How you feeling? I know it was a tough week. I know I don't want to, berate this too much, but what do you think, bro?
Well, the two guys that you just shouted out, the two guys that you're going to be playing, are the two guys that beat me last week.
Yeah.
So my watch, unfortunately, has ended. Yes, I know. Yeah, it's tough. We'll get into it, but I've got two names for you. Just want to throw those names out there. Breece Hall, Bijon Robinson. We'll talk about it later, but it's too soon for me right now. I'm too mad. I'm squeezing a stress ball as we speak to just not throw my goddamn computer across my room right now. Jesus. Rough week. But hey, guys, don't worry. We're going to get you a fantasy championship, a Frankly Fantasy Championship, and it starts right here. We've got a great episode for you today. We're going to be doing our starts and sits, our hit it and quit it, the most important thing for Week 16. We're going to look at a Thursday night preview. But first, as always, we're going to get into the news, baby.
The season of your listeners don't expect.
News and notes. Okay, don't forget, you can also get some news from us on our Instagram. Great follow. There's going to be start sits on there. There's a lot of funny shit as well, but you'll get some news of some guys that are hurt or maybe playing. Take a look. Please follow us on Instagram, Frankly Fantasy Football. All right, let's get into some news here, man. Ja'Marr Chase, shoulder injury. He's going to be out for Week 16, probably out for 2 weeks. You're probably done with Ja'Marr Chase, unfortunately, so make some other plans there. All right, since we're on the Bengals here with Ja'Marr Chase, I have to assume T. Higgins. Thank God. Welcome back, brother.
Wow. Yeah.
How
welcome.
about that touchdown? Was that the coolest shit you've ever seen? Oh my God. Yeah. Just reaching behind, that reverse reach around is what I'd like to call that.
That was a reverse reach, and it was very, very productive. That was a really well done reverse reach.
Yeah. It was very, very good, man. Good to see him back. I assume T. Higgins is a must start now at this point.
Definitely.
Ja'Marr Chase out.
Slam start there, man. Yeah, definitely.
Okay. What about Tyler Boyd? This is semis here. This is semifinals. We're not fucking around now, Frank. This is not, I think it's a guy you could play. No, man, there's championships on the line. Your team, you've got Tyler Boyd. Is this the time that you're looking at starting up Tyler Boyd, probably in a flex position?
No, not this week. They're playing in a divisional game against that of Pittsburgh this week, John. And even when Ja'Marr Chase was banged up and went out last week, Tyler Boyd, he had 2 catches, 5 targets for 53 yards. So didn't put up a bust of a stat line. But again, I think you probably have better options out there. I believe in what Jake Browning is doing, man. I do. I think if you're not a believer at this point, you're kind of just a hater. But no, I'm not willing to risk Tyler Boyd in a divisional matchup against Pittsburgh in my flex spot this week in the semis.
Okay, let's talk a little bit of Houston Texans here. CJ Stroud set to miss again, it's looking like. He's still having headaches. He has not practiced this week. Looks like he is going to miss Week 16 versus the Browns. You've also got Nico Collins, who's questionable as well. We'll get to that, I think, in our sit situation here, Frank, a little bit later. Geno Smith, okay, expected to start versus the Titans, like actually start this time, not be active, not going to fuck with the Cowboys or fuck with the Eagles by saying he's active, but we don't know who the starter is. Well, that was some weird shit, wasn't it?
That was really weird, man. I mean, I don't think I've ever seen that to that degree before, knowing that Geno's active, yet they're not sure if Tyler Locke's going to be rolling out there. And then 5 minutes before the game, I mean, they're like, okay, yeah, it's Tyler Lock, and everybody's frantically freaking out, and putting their fantasy lineups and stuff. So yeah, I don't think I've ever actually seen that to that degree before.
Did you see the panic in our text threads from our leagues?
I was
We've
dying.
got all of our leagues. We've got these text threads going, and there were guys. Shout out to Lance Harmon. He's sitting there going, "Come on, Pete Carroll, what the fuck are you doing? Just tell me who's goddamn playing." Oh man, that was rough. Geno Smith is expected to start this week, though. Another quarterback change here. Taylor Heineke is going to start in Week 16 for the Falcons versus the Colts. Is this going to affect who you're looking at putting out there for the Falcons, Frank?
No, it won't. I mean, if you have Drake London, more than likely you have to start him, assuming he's on your team, probably in a flex spot, something like that. Maybe you're willing to start Pitts. I wouldn't be. And again, we're going to talk about Bijon here in a bit and that whole running back situation. So no, this isn't going to change anything for me. I think it's just, they're trying to figure out what the hell to do at this point.
Yeah. Keaton Mitchell tears his ACL. He is out for the season, running back for the Baltimore Ravens. Now, without Keaton Mitchell back there, you've got the Ravens this week. We're going to have Justice Hill and Gus Edwards. What's that backfield look like? Are you comfortable throwing either of these two guys out there in your semifinal week?
John, no. And I know one of them are going to pop off, right? I know that Gus Edwards or Justice Hill could have double digits. The problem is they're playing San Francisco. We're having two juggernauts at 11-3 going to try to prove that they are the best team in the NFL. Because it's between those two at this point in time, in my opinion. And so for me, man, no, I don't think this is a good matchup. I don't like this on Christmas Day night, on a Monday night fashion, and all the spotlight is on it. I see this being much more the Lamar Jackson show, doing what he's been doing, right? Running the ball often and effectively and distributing the ball, across some of his receivers and Isaiah Likely at this point. So no, man, I know it's crazy. One of them might pop off and you might need to start Gus Edwards or Justice Hill, right, in a big league. But for me, I would look elsewhere.
In my mind, if you have to start somebody, you've got Gus Edwards. I think Gus Edwards is the one because he's going to be the goal line back. You just got to hope for some goal line touches there. But yeah, I'm with you on that, man. I don't feel good about it. If desperation, you have to do it. You got to do what you got to do. But if I've got choices, not the choice I would make. Chiefs coach Andy Reid expects Isaiah Pacheco to play versus the Raiders. If Isaiah Pacheco is active, play him, lick your chops, and enjoy his week. He's been awesome, and the Raiders can't stop anybody. Mason Rudolph, quarterback for the Pittsburgh Steelers, looking to start versus the Bengals here. Okay, what's this going to do? Mason Rudolph, all I remember is we were at the game with the Browns game and the Steelers when Myles Garrett took the helmet off and beat Mason Rudolph. Yeah, I remember that. Okay, anyway, Mason Rudolph at the helm. You've got Pat Freiermuth, who's questionable. He may play. Deontay Johnson, George Pickens. What are we doing with these guys?
John, for me, I'm actually leaning towards potentially starting that of Deontay Johnson. We'll talk about him here in a bit, but really what he's shown over the last few weeks with the quarterback carousel happening between Kenny Pickett, Mitch Trubisky, and now it's going to be Mason Rudolph is he's kind of the guy. I mean, running these quick routes, running these drag routes, running these slants, he has absolutely solidified himself as their number one target and or receiver at this point in time. So for me, man, I think I would actually fire up Deontay Johnson this week in that flex spot, knowing it's your semis. Now, what this does for some of the other folks, I'm real nervous about Pickens. And I say that, man, because and I'm not trying to, add on to what the media is saying and everything like that about his effort, but there was a couple plays there that, was a bit shocking for a Mike Tomlin driven team to where he definitely took a playoff or four. And yeah, he can say he's blaming it on, the Tank Dell injury and he doesn't want to get injured and get rolled up on. At the end of the day, man, it was soft. Like, it was real soft on your approach there. And you totally left Jalen Warren out to dry, who could have scored. And so for me, man, what I'm getting at is there's been some turmoil here with Pickens on this team. And I think it's, there could be some issues. So I would actually lean maybe a little bit away from Pickens this week, knowing it's a divisional rival, knowing that Mason Rudolph is at the helm. Again, I like that of Deontay Johnson. Now, Freiermuth, right, if he's healthy, right, he's a little bit banged up, he could be interesting as well, right? We've solved some of that connection previously, so there's some synergy already there, which I like. So he could be a nice little, start for you if you need a tight end and you don't like some of the tight ends you can stream. As long as he's healthy and ready to go, yeah, it could be interesting in this particular game, John.
Okay, let's move on to Indianapolis here. We've got an interesting situation in this backfield, Frank, and I don't know that we're going to have a good answer to help anybody here. And the answer just may be stay away.
Yeah.
Zach Moss, shoulder injury. He's going to try to play versus the Falcons. I don't love that news. That doesn't make me feel good. JT, Jonathan Taylor, also could play. It's possible. Backups, Trey Sermon, Tyler Goodson. Now, they both came in and both combined for 157 yards rushing last week. What are we doing here with this team, man?
To your point, man, I'm not starting any of them. The only one that I would remotely start is if he plays would be JT. But you're taking a huge risk. I mean, you're taking a huge risk in re-injuring. You're taking a huge risk against also a pretty darn good defense at this point in time, especially against that of the run. So, John, yeah, I mean, JT, I would put my money where my mouth is, and I would start him if he ends up playing. But I'm not necessarily sure I feel super great about it. But I'm not starting Zach Moss, Trey Sermon, Tyler Goodson if JT is not playing.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a carousel. If Zach Moss were healthy, it's a different story.
Totally.
He's not. They're certainly going to work in these other guys. Even if Zach Moss can get on the field, it's not going to be a full workload. Can't be. Okay. Michael Pittman also in the same team here with the Colts in concussion protocol. Monitor this, guys. So you're going to have to watch and see if he gets out of this, because you definitely want to play Michael Pittman if he can play here. Trevor Lawrence also in concussion protocol as well. You're just going to have to monitor, get closer to game time and see if he's going to go, but make plans just in case he can't. Some somewhat good news here. Chris Olave, wide receiver for the New Orleans Saints, limited practice on Tuesday, so that's good. He's back on the field. Monitor him. He should be able to play for Thursday Night Football. Now, this is interesting. Thursday Night Football, we'll talk about the game, but we've got some guys coming back for this New Orleans Saints offense with Rashid Shaheed. We've got Alvin Kamara. We've got Chris Olave. Could be pretty interesting there. All right, Keenan Allen. I want your take on this, Frankie. Keenan Allen did not practice, wide receiver for the Chargers. The miserable Chargers, who, by the way, after the game, immediately fired their head coach, immediately fired their GM. And Keenan Allen did not practice. And in the notes here, Frank, I just put, I wouldn't fucking play either. I mean, that's...
No. Fuck no. Absolutely not.
If you're the Keenan Allen owner, I would make plans to be without him, because he's got a heel injury, but this is one of those things. This is a veteran guy. He doesn't have much longer in here. He does not want to sit here and go down with the ship and, risk injury or anything else. I would not expect him to be playing, but keep an eye on that. What do you think about that?
I agree, John. Unless something drastically changes over the next couple days or so, I also don't know if I would really risk it. I mean, your head coach is gone, your star quarterback that's getting you the ball is gone. Maybe the Chargers are looking to evaluate some of these other receivers to understand what's happening from this perspective, knowing contracts are coming into play. The other key factor here, John, in that contract talk is the Chargers are screwed for the next few years. I mean, they have to pay Khalil Mack $38 million. They're going to owe Justin Herbert quite a bit coming down the pike. Keenan Allen as well. I mean, and John, there's 4 or 5 players. JC Jackson, they still are paying him. They're going to have to pay these guys handsomely next year in the year after for their contracts. So right now, man, if I'm the Chargers, I'm telling Keenan, yo, you're good. Sit down, do your thing. Maybe take some rest here. We need to evaluate some other guys, because right now it's not worth getting him hurt, especially if you can utilize him next year for a serious push.
I agree. We'll talk about some of the Chargers here. We'll look at this. They play on Saturday. We're going to look at a few of these Saturday games here. And I've definitely got some worries about a few other guys on that team too. And we'll get to that. All right, last piece of news here is Zach Wilson, the little fucking Mormon kid, will be the starter if he clears protocol for the Jets. Cool. That's all I have to say. Cool. Awesome. All right, man. Let's look at some ice and fire here. You know what? I want to play the intro to this one more time.
Yeah.
You know?
God,
Yeah.
feels good.
I haven't done the Game of Thrones ice and fire for a while, so I miss it. All right, I love it. All right, let's get into some ice here. Guys that were on ice this past week, we're just going to touch on a few guys here. And Frankie, what I really want to know is, all right, yes, they sucked this past week. Are they going to suck again? Can we play them? This is do or die, man. I mean, Dak Prescott, number one guy on here, quarterback, 4 points. That whole team just got obliterated. That was shocking, beyond shocking.
Beyond shocking.
Dak was terrible. Dak looked like shit. What's going on there? And how are we feeling this week for Dak? Is it a slam dunk?
John, I don't know if this is actually a slam dunk. Miami's defense looked amazing. Now, granted, they were playing the Jets offense, so we have to be able to compartmentalize what happened and what we saw, right? The same thing applies with what we saw from Denver and Miami, right? Miami boat races Denver, and then Denver comes out and wins like 6 or 7 straight after a certain period of time. And so, yeah, man, I mean, for me, I'm still riding with Dak. He's the number 3 overall quarterback. I expect a huge bounce back. With the Philadelphia Eagles losing, the Cowboys have everything on the line to win the division, which means a home playoff advantage against, some up and coming tough NFC teams. I mean, let's just call it what it is. The Rams are coming up. Seattle Seahawks just beat the Eagles. Who the hell knows what that team's going to look like in the next few weeks? So yeah, man, I think that for me, I'm going to ride in the flames with that of Dak this week, knowing Miami's high-powered offense. Tyreek could end up being back. If that happens, now you got Tyreek and Waddle, and what you're going to need to do in order to keep up with them, you got to pass the ball effectively. I think Dak is going to have a bounce back. It's in Miami. Could be some great warm weather. Dak performs well in warm weather.
Okay, another quarterback here. Shit the bed, Justin Fields.
Yeah.
8 points out of Justin Fields. Tough game for him. All right, this week he's at home playing Arizona. I assume you're going to want to throw Justin Fields out there.
John, I'm starting Justin Fields. This week. If you can stream him, get him. We'll talk about him a little bit later. But absolutely, John, that 8.6 points of what he had really wasn't the full story. He actually had, let's just call it, the Hail Mary at the end was a touchdown. I mean, that was a drop touchdown. And then he also had another blown play for Cole Kmet. I mean, it was bad. It was real bad. And then the other tight end as well. So he actually had 2 or 3 touchdowns dropped. And so for me, man, I just think it's stay in the flames against an Arizona defense that's putrid. And I think that he's going to need to continue to show out and prove that he's the guy for Chicago, especially with them as of right now having the number 1 overall pick. So I like Justin Fields this week, man.
Yeah, Justin Fields is auditioning for another job right now.
Definitely.
And this is the week for him to do it, I think. Cleveland defense last week, very difficult defense. How about the Hail Mary? He had 2 Hail Marys. He had a Hail Mary after the first half that was picked and a Hail Mary at the end of the game that was picked. I don't know if that's ever happened. That's pretty unusual, man. All right, we'll talk about Justin Fields a little bit later here. Okay, let's look at some running backs. Bijon Robinson, negative 1.1 points. Frankie, I can't talk. I'm going to have to pass this on to you because my hand hurts from slapping that fucking mustache off of goddamn Arthur Smith. I can't even believe it. I had Breece Hall. I had Bijon Robinson. I had a good week ahead of me, man. Everything looked great. I had a wonderful team. I lost by, maybe 12 points. I can't even remember exactly. It wasn't very much. Let's just put it that way. And Breece Hall and Bijon Robinson combined for like 3 total points. And I can't believe it. What's going on with Bijon? And are we going to go through this again this week?
John, I think that what happened with Bijon was a travesty. I think that Arthur Smith deserves to lose his job. because he is mismanaging this to a degree that I don't know I've seen in the NFL. Like, seriously, like, this is pathetic, is what he's done. Especially when, you know what, I'm going to get on my fucking soapbox here, because you know what? He ended up, man, you are in the playoff hunt. Like, literally, you are in the top of your division with the Bucks, the Saints, and you. You're the worst division in the NFL, and yet you still have a chance to be your division leader. You're playing against the worst team in the NFL, and you decide when it's monsooning out, you're away at Carolina, it's monsooning, crazy rain for the entirety of the game. Your rookie running back fumbled, and you thought it was a good idea to sit his ass for the rest of the game. I find that to be so petty and ridiculous that caused you your win there. That specifically caused you your win. You play Bijan more likely than not, then you are having a better opportunity to win. Why are you not doing that? A good example, John, we were talking about this earlier on. McVay, Kyron Williams fumbles, right? He's not taking his ass out. He might take him out for a series or something, but he's putting his ass back in, and then he feeds him over 30 touches. And guess what they do? They win the game. And now they're back into a playoff position. What good coaches do is, yeah, they discipline when need to be, but then they're not petty enough to let that carry over and put your team in a losing position. And that's exactly what Arthur Smith did. And so now, you know, he's blaming it on the quarterback play. Well, guess what, man? You put any quarterback in a monsoon like that, more than likely they're not going to play super great. So you know what you should do? You should rely on the run. And so, fun fact, man, they gave Tyler Algier 14 rushes. They gave Bijon Robinson 7. They gave Cordero Patterson 5. And they ran Desmond Ridder 5 times. You're telling me out of that list there, Bijan Robinson, you give him 15, 16 touches, that's not going to put you in a better position to win? Dude, I'm telling you, man, I was disgusted with that position, with what Arthur Smith did and the way he operated his team. I thought that it was petty. I thought that it was ridiculous. And I'm kind of pissed off for Bijan. Now, the flip side of this is you brought up something really brilliant. And you were like, well, hey, I started digging into this, right? And what did you say, John? I'll let you kind of speak for yourself there. But you said you were digging into it about the stacked box and things like that.
Yeah, looking into that, and I think I heard somebody talking about this on another podcast. But yeah, they were looking at Tyler Algier. He's in there when there's 7 or 8 men in the box, and Bijan Robinson's in there when there's 5 men in the box typically. And it seems that Arthur Smith is trying to just be a little too cute, that he wants to keep Bijan, out of those stack boxes, in more of a shotgun, spread offenses, that type of thing, and run Tyler Algier up the middle. But you had a great retort to that, is that Bijan's used to doing that. He saw stacked boxes all throughout college, so it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. It just seems a little cute to me. When you've got that much talent in your backfield, you've got to be utilizing it. You've got to be utilizing it. And then find better ways to utilize it. Find better ways to get him in space, to get him the ball. I just don't understand why that's not happening.
And John, also with the stacked box and things like that, yeah, exactly. Like in college, but also what the fuck do you think is going to happen when it's monsooning out? Why do you think that we're going to run 3 wide or 4 wide and that all of a sudden now these teams are going to be like, oh yeah, let's run a zone outside or whatever it may be? Of course they're going to stack the box when it's monsooning. So again, it just goes back to your point, way too cute. You got way too far in your bag and you tried to pull out shit that didn't work and you lost because of it. And so to me, man, yeah, I think that was a really messed up move for Bijan, and I think that was a poor look on Arthur Smith's part.
All right, now let's look at this week with Bijan. I mean, you have to play him, right?
You have to play him. You have to fire up Bijan Robinson this week, John. And I'll tell you what, I am also in that camp. They're playing Denver's defense. Denver's defense is up there with some of the worst against the run. And so now looking at this, they are playing against that of the Colts this week, not Denver, the Colts this week. And so looking at the Colts, they're playing at home, John. They're playing in the Dome in Atlanta, everything on the line, right? Same thing with the Colts here. So what you need to do, you don't have to worry about the elements. You don't have to worry about anything else than coming in here and winning at home. The playoffs are still on the line. There are still 3 weeks left in the NFL season. Right? If the Saints lose, Bucks lose, you guys win 3-way tie as it sits. So for me, man, I think that Arthur Smith is definitely got his hand slapped because the owner came out and said basically, hey, we're going to evaluate these next 3 games and make a decision from that point. You would be insane if you're Arthur Smith at home not to run the shit out of Bijon Robinson, especially against this Colts D, because the Colts D has been pretty damn solid against the pass. And right now you're rolling out Taylor Heineke, right? You can't decide on a quarterback, right? Desmond Ridder had, John, we talked about it, what, 3 or 4 300-yard games in like a 5 or 6 game span. So he wasn't necessarily performing terrible, right? And so everything's up in the air. Go back to what you know, and you know this guy can play. So for me, man, I'm firing up Bijon Robinson.
Okay. Breece Hall. Let's just go back to back here. Let's just twist the knife in my goddamn soul. Oh, God. Okay, let's look at Breece Hall this week, man. I mean, what do you have here? Let me just look at it again. 2 points. Okay, so these were my running backs on my amazing team I put together. Bijan Robinson, -1 point, and Breece Hall with 2 points. So, okay, they got me 1 point.
1 point combined.
Wow. Unbelievable. Unfucking believable. All right, Breece Hall. What do we do now? I mean, what are we doing with the Jets in general this week?
I mean, John, this is really tough. I actually shout out Naz. Brought up a brilliant Naz for those listening and watching. It's one of my best friends, grew up with. On top of it, he's brilliant at fantasy football. We're in a few leagues together. He asked me, who does he start? And one of those guys was Breece Hall. Another one was Deontay Johnson, Kenneth Walker, etc. Breece Hall's matchup this week is salivatingly sexy, right? We're talking Washington, right? In a game to where it's at the Jets, right? So that home stadium feel, you know that this is a game you can win on your defense and with your run game. The problem is, the more I started diving into it is that they only ran Breece Hall 6 times last game. 6 times, okay? There has now been a problem, John, over when we start looking at his rush attempts over the last 4 weeks. It's concerning. 6 rushes, even if you're down, right? Even if you're down, you need to still run Breece. 6 rushes, 10 rushes against Houston, right? 13 rushes against Atlanta, 7 rushes again against Miami. And here has been his rushing yardage total, right? 25 yards, 16 yards, 40 yards, and 12 yards this past week. John, where Breece Hall has been effective has been in the receiving game. And so he's had 9 in the last 4 weeks, starting with week 12, 9 targets, 8 targets, 9 targets, 2 targets. So for me, I'm actually a little more nervous about Breece Hall this week, because are they going to try and see what Dalvin Cook is going to be able to do? Are they going to try some of the rookies that they actually got into play, who, as crazy as it sounds, actually scored more points than these guys? And so fantasy points. And so for me, man, at face value, you're looking at this and you're like, yeah, I'm starting Breece Hall against Washington. I think it's a little bit deeper than that. So for me, man, you know, and Naz, if you're listening out there, we went back and forth a bit. If you have other options, go the other options this week, even though the matchups are great for the Jets against Washington because of the uncertainty of this team. Don't put yourself in a position to where, right, this isn't necessarily a super high ceiling play here, guys, right? Like, this isn't like, you're going to see a Gabe Davis throw up, a 30-point banger or a 0. This is actually like with Zach Wilson potentially being out, they might have to start Boyle again, and right, just the whole turmoil happening around the Jets, Sean. I don't know if I'm willing to risk the semis on Breece Hall.
Yeah, I'm with you on that, especially if you're in a more shallow league, 8-10 man league. I definitely would not start Breece Hall. You definitely go after some other options here. But yeah, it's just brutal. It's been consistent, unfortunately. They're just not giving him the opportunity. He's got all the talent in the world. But again, fantasy football is where talent meets opportunity. The opportunity is just not there. With the Jets, the other option here is Garrett Wilson. Now, I do think that you can start Garrett Wilson.
Definitely.
Yeah, I do think you can play Garrett Wilson here, because I think Washington really will shut down the run, just stack the box, make Zach Wilson beat you, which he never does.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that might be the strategy. So yeah, I would look at some other options besides Breece Hall this week. Okay, Javonte Williams. Let's get to him a little bit. Javonte with 3 points, King Henry with 3 points, Saquon with 4 points, Eckler 5. I mean, it's Pollard 6. Man, these guys really killed people this week. Let's look at King Henry for a second. All right, King Henry. Moving forward, how you feeling about Derrick Henry here this week, week 16?
John, I'm firing up Derrick Henry this week. They're playing Seattle, right? Seattle's defense has been coming on. Let me be very crystal clear. But the thing is that I really like this matchup, right? We're looking at they're back at home, right? They had a really tough matchup against that of Houston in terms of just it didn't go their way. Some of the things that was happening. I mean, Derrick Henry, John, I mean, outside of last week against Houston, every other time he's played Houston, it's been double-digit fantasy points. Okay. So now we're rolling into that of Seattle. Yeah, it's a good team, but Seattle, they just won a very emotional game with that of the Eagles at home. So now that they got to travel to Nashville, man, I could actually see Derrick Henry getting the lion's share of the load once more. So I'm definitely starting him, staying in the flames with him, especially since he's the number 8 running back in half PPR, averaging 13 points a game right now. So I'm going to stay in the flames with him this week.
Will Levis is banged up as well. He's not going to be quite as mobile, so he's going to have to rely, I think, more on the running game this week. Definitely. Okay. We'll talk about Eckler in a little bit here, man. Let's look at Zay Flowers, another guy on ice. This one was kind of shocking. 1 point out of Zay Flowers. I think he just had one catch on the day for maybe 15 yards, something like that. What do you do with Zay Flowers moving forward? He's always seems to be a guy I've got him in a super flex league with Lamar as my quarterback. So I've got the stack, but Zay Flowers and like 2 other guys is kind of the carousel I had in my flex spot. When do you start Zay Flowers? Is this going to be the week?
John, this is tough. This is super tough. I'll lump him in with OBJ at this point, right? Zay Flowers with 1.2 points, OBJ with 1.9. And, they're playing against San Francisco. And the interesting thing is San Francisco's rush D is very good. Their pass D, they've been scored on. They've had some points put up against them from the pass perspective. And you look at how effective and efficient Lamar has been throwing the ball. At any given point in time, one of these guys could pop. So, man, this is really tough. And you look at what Zay Flowers did, man. I mean, 2 targets last week. But prior to that, he had 10 and then 8. And so for me, man, I don't know. I'm not leaning towards starting any of the Ravens receivers this week, strictly because if Lamar ends up targeting that of Isaiah Likely, which again, we've seen an uptick with his production significantly, especially since Mark Andrews, but even over the course of the last few weeks, there's like Lamar and tight ends. It's just like peanut butter and chocolate, right? It's like you take a bite of that frozen Reese cup, and the key is a frozen Reese cup. If you've never had one, you're sinning. Go to church, go talk to the priest, and get your demons out, right? Freeze a Reese cup and get it in your fucking mouth and try it out. It's delicious. So what I'm getting at is I'm almost leaning towards John going more Isaiah Likely this week and really looking towards him as the main component, rather than taking a flyer on OBJ and Zay Flowers. Because here's the other thing. You're going to have the Baltimore Ravens are playing against Nick Bosa, who is just dominating along with many others in this defensive front. John, I could see them trying to throw the ball, but Lamar's going to have to scramble outside of the pocket. So unless it's a broken play, I could see Lamar actually running more. So what I'm getting at is I'm not as high or bullish on these Baltimore receivers bleeding into this week, knowing how emotionally charged both sides of the teams are going to be. It's Christmas Day night. Everything is on the line here for both teams. And if they win this, whoever wins this game, I mean, it's a lock. You're locked in for the number 1 seed, in my personal opinion. And now you have home field advantage pretty much throughout the entirety of the playoffs. So I am not willing to put up these receivers in a semifinal fantasy football week.
All right. That game could be the Super Bowl this year.
Could be. Very well could
Ravens 49ers very well could be. All right, one last guy on ice I want to talk about. This seems to be the decline of Travis Kelce. Are we witnessing the beginning of the end? He's still great, but he's certainly not the player he was. Is it Taylor Swift's fault?
It's not. It is, but it's not. It is a little bit, a smidge. Just a smidge. No, I mean, here's the deal, man. I mean, the guy's been dominant for fucking, 10 years at this point, just about. I mean, he's done everything he needs to do. He's already made multiple remarks that he's ready to retire here pretty soon. His girlfriend is, I mean, right, smoke show, gazillionaire, does her thing. Like, he's getting to a point to where I think
bitches on the planet, man.
exactly, man. He's getting to a point to where is football actually becoming secondary, and his podcast is taking off with his brother, and he's having a blast. And so, bringing it back to fantasy here, yeah, I think we are slowly witnessing the decline. But here's the other part of this. He has no one else. Yeah, Rashee Rice is coming on. Yes, he's the number one receiver on that team. But when we're saying that this rookie is the number one receiver on this team, that's a problem because defenses are keying on Kelsey, right? That's leaving open Rashee Rice. That's leaving open Kadarius Toney, who can't catch a ball to save his life, right? So the teams are keying on Kelsey, knowing pretty much this is it. Rashee Rice, we're going to go one-on-one with, and God bless him if he beats us. So it all factors in, man. And so for me, yeah, to answer your question, I think the honeymoon that we've seen for the last 7 years, pretty much of the domination that he's done, is slowly coming to a close. So enjoy it while we see it, man, because we don't know how much longer we're going to see this badass tight end continue to play.
All right. Let's get to a couple of guys that are on fire.
Let me stand next to your fire.
Okay. All right. Hey, one guy on fire here, Frank. Let's get to this, okay? It was a bake show. It was the British baking show here.
Oh, yeah.
Baker Mayfield, 33 points, okay, with a perfect game. Talk about Baker. We still got some love for Baker.
Absolutely. Cleveland as a whole has got some love for Baker. Shout out to the Cleveland. Shout out to the Brownies, the land, and shout out to Baker Mayfield, man. Trust me, there are many people that still love you, even though it didn't work out. What was beautiful about this, man, is that he is the only quarterback outside of Aaron Rodgers in the history of Lambeau Field who's played at Lambeau to throw for a perfect game. Think about what I just said. Think about the quarterbacks that have played there. Think about the Hall of Famers that have played there. Think about the opposing quarterbacks that have played there. Baker Mayfield, Aaron Rodgers, only quarterbacks to ever throw a perfect game at Lambeau. Shout out, bro. That was beautiful. That was wonderful to watch, and it was just amazing.
All right. Well, what does Baker look like moving forward? I mean, is this for week 16 in your semifinals? If you're in that streaming quarterback category or in a super flex, I mean, what are you doing with Baker this week? Is this something that you feel good about?
You know, John, with Baker Mayfield, they're playing Jacksonville. So, and they're at home against Jacksonville. So, right. I mean, it's Florida matchup here, but a lot is on the line. So, yeah, man, I think you absolutely can fire up Baker Mayfield if your quarterbacks are banged up. They have a super tough matchup. This is definitely an interesting stream for this week. The other key call out is Jacksonville, right, might not have Trevor Lawrence. So that will significantly impact game flow, gameplay, everything for that of Jacksonville, which means their defense could be on the field more often, which means they're going to be tired, which means that Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Rachaad White catching the ball from that of Baker Mayfield could be awesome once more. So absolutely, John, this is definitely a week that I believe if you desperately need a quarterback and you're looking for streaming options, you could look at Baker.
Okay. Well, let's look at a couple other backups here. I mean, we've got a whole list of backups who did pretty well. Aiden O'Connell with 32 points. Nick Mullins, 21 points. Nick Mullins, let's talk about Mullins here. We had some questions on YouTube about Justin Jefferson and about Jordan Addison. People, making fun of us because we said not to play Jordan Addison or we wouldn't play Jordan Addison. And of course he scores. Moving forward, though, realistically, I mean, they still weren't able to support 3 receivers on this offense. Right. I mean, that was our main point about this. Addison happened to get the ones that ended up going in the end zone, but that could have been Hawkinson. That could have been JJ. Yeah. I mean, how are you feeling about them moving forward here with Nick Mullins?
I think that this is very, let me put it like this. I think that this could be very similar to that of what happened with Aiden O'Connell when he first came in for that of Jimmy G, right? He had a couple good games. And then, or better yet, let's keep it in Minnesota, Josh Dobbs. Because teams don't have tape on you on these specific teams, right? Because they're different schemes. Even though we saw Josh Dobbs play in Arizona, right? That doesn't mean that this is the same Josh Dobbs that is going to play in a Kevin O'Connell offense, right? And so it's a little bit different. It's a little bit more nuanced here because, right, they played a Cincinnati Bengals team, right? And it was a really interesting game, really down to the wire. But looking at Detroit, this is a different matchup. This is an NFC North opponent. Minnesota's definitely still in the playoff hunt. They're vying for the playoffs. And I think that they still have an opportunity if they went out here and have a couple losses from other teams. So they have something to fight for. The problem is, so does Detroit. And Detroit has an opportunity to lock everything up this week. And so, John, for me, man, I don't know if I'm willing to start Nick Mullins yet because of the fact that Detroit's defense could be all over him with Aiden Hutchinson, right? Who knows what's going to happen with Ty Chandler? Is that a fluke game? Is that truly who Ty Chandler is? Which would be incredible if so. But also that factored into how well Nick Mullins played too, right? Because the run game opened up lanes for Nick Mullins. So I don't necessarily see him being like bare floor, like a Zach Wilson type of thing by any means. I think a good comparable to Nick Mullins this week could be a Tommy DeVito, right? In the sense of he's not going to have as much rushing yardage, but I feel like that's an appropriate ceiling, right? It could be a 19, 18 ceiling with a very low floor as well. So I think that I want to make sure we level set expectations.
In my mind, when we're looking at the receivers with Nick Mullins, I see JJ as a wide receiver 2, and I see Addison as a flex with upside.
Yeah, fair.
Yeah. Okay. All right, let's keep going here. All right, let's get right into Ty Chandler. Let's go into some running backs here. Ty Chandler had a hell of a game, 24 points for you in your fantasy team this week, man. I mean, you still got Madison as questionable, still might not play this week. But Ty Chandler, do we throw him out there? Is this somebody who can help you win your league this week?
John, I'm going to go with a hot take here. I am not starting Ty Chandler this week, even though he is the featured back and coming off of a career game for him. The reason being is because right now, that Detroit rush defense, the rush defense, not the overall defense or the pass defense, the rush defense is top 5 in the NFL. Okay. So very, very good. Detroit is also coming off an insane game against whoever I forget off the top of my head who they ended up playing. But Jared Goff went nuclear.
Denver on
Thank you,
Saturday
Denver.
night.
That's correct. Yeah. So went nuclear. So for me, man, no. And after seeing what they did against Javonte Williams and Samaje Perine, no, I'm not willing to roll him out this week against a defense that is top 5 in the rush. And again, it could have been the perfect time for the perfect game for how everything broke out for Ty Chandler, or I could be totally wrong and he could end up being a Devin Singletary, right? Who's had multiple 20-point games in a row. However, based on this matchup, I'm looking elsewhere.
Okay. All right, let's get to some receivers here, man. We had Josh Palmer, your boy. I know you called me before the game and you're like, dude, I got a legitimate start sit question here. Do I start Josh Palmer, or was it Josh Downs and Josh Palmer?
That's exactly what it was.
Yeah. And you ended up starting Palmer, 21 points for you. All right. So Palmer, yeah, that made the big difference for you. With Palmer now, Keenan Allen might not be playing. Austin Eckler, who the hell knows what's going to happen there. Do you play Josh Palmer with, what's the quarterback's name again?
Easton Stick.
Easton Stick. Yes. Mr. Stick.
Mr. Stick.
Do you want Josh Palmer out there with Mr. Stick?
You know what? Yeah. No. Let me frame this up. In an 8 and 10 league, man, or a 10 man league. Geez. No. There's better options. Look elsewhere. In a 14 to 16 man league, definitely. Because especially in the double flex, because what we saw is that he has that breakaway speed, and Easton Stick was looking his way, even though he didn't have a lot of targets. He was effective with the targets that he had. So for me, man, I think that he is somebody that I would be willing to roll out this week, especially if Keenan Allen is out. Because right now, we're looking at an interim head coach stepping into the play. We're looking at Austin Eckler, who's been struggling. The running game as a whole has been really bad. And then, right, if no other receiver has stepped up, Quentin Johnston has been absolutely terrible this year. And Keenan Allen might be hurt. So, yeah, man, that might be him and Gerald Everett might be the best options for this specific game this week.
All right, let's look at another guy here. He's been a little confusing and he's quietly had a good year here. Curtis Samuel, wide receiver for the Washington Commanders, 18 points last week. With Curtis Samuel, I mean, he's kind of the number one basically when it comes to targets. I mean, is this a guy you can roll out this week?
I'll tell you what, I love Curtis Samuel. I love what he's done. He's been fun to watch. He's used in so many different packages. John, this is tough. They're playing at New York Jets, right? Jets defense is amazing. Yes, they got torched by Miami, but it almost makes me feel like this isn't going to happen again, right? In terms of them getting torched. Robert Saleh at home is not going to let this defense get decimated again, let alone Sam Howell or Jacoby Brissett, right, throwing the ball. And so for me, man, I want to say, yeah, start him, but I can't. I can't say that this week strictly due to the matchup and the quarterback carousel here. Who knows what's going to happen, right? Bijon Robinson is still banged up. He might be out again. And then you have Antonio Gibson, who really struggled last week going against a top-tier D. I'm looking elsewhere, man.
I'm going to say to probably just go ahead and sit all your Washington Commanders at this point.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
Yeah. I think it was such an embarrassing game against Miami that I could see the Jets coming out just wanting to rip people's heads off type of game.
Ripping some throats, man. We got to shout this receiver out. We got to shout this receiver out too, by the way. Trey Tucker, rookie wide receiver for the Raiders. He's our boy's boy. You know, he's from Akron, Ohio, from our hometown here. Trey Tucker, he scored twice. Great week on you, man. Love it. Love to see. First of all, Trey, I know you're not listening. I'm pretty sure you're not listening, but Trey, we'd like to get you on the podcast next year. Let's talk before camp. Let's get you and Tyler Scott out here. Let's see what we can do to get you guys on, man. Great game, though, last week. All right, let's look at some tight ends. Sam Laporta is amazing. He's beautiful. 26 points. He have 3 touchdowns this past week. I mean, first of all, he is the most productive statistically rookie tight end in NFL history. How much fun is that, by the way? But Sam Laporta, you got to love having him. We'll have lots of talks about him going into the 2024 season here. Isaiah Likely, 15 points. It sounded like what we were talking about earlier, Frank, that Isaiah Likely is really the only pass catcher on the Ravens you're looking at starting this week.
Yeah, 100%, John. For me, I find it difficult. I find it difficult to look elsewhere. I like Isaiah Likely this week, man. I do.
Trey McBride, 15 points. Trey McBride has just exploded. He's been amazing. You're firing him up on all cylinders constantly. All right, let me ask you about, here's a couple of guys who did well. Hunter Henry, 16 points. Tucker Kraft, 13 points. Are you starting either of these two guys this week?
So it's interesting. I had somebody ask me, John, they have Hunter Henry, but they also have TJ Hawkinson. And they asked me, who would you rather start? And my initial thought process is like, you're an idiot if you think that you're not firing up TJ Hawkinson. Like, why are you asking me this? But I started diving in a bit deeper, and there's validity to it. Because the last few weeks, Sean, the last 2 weeks against Pittsburgh and Kansas City, when they made the quarterback switch to Bailey Zappi, right, he has now been dominating to the tune of, John, if I look at this, he had 3 receptions against, or 3 targets against Pittsburgh, 3 receptions, 40 yards, 2 touchdowns. And then against Kansas City, John, he had 9 targets, 7 receptions, 66 yards, and a touchdown. 9 targets was his season high. Okay. And so when I'm looking at this, man, I think, yeah, you can start Hunter Henry this week. And when you look at, who they're going against, John, they're going against that of Denver. Denver's defense against tight ends has not been good either, right? And so, yeah, there's validity here. My question to you is, John, which I actually need a little bit of help on. Is this a week that you could look at, right? Assuming that it's a double flex, could you actually start Hunter Henry and TJ Hawkinson this week, or would you look elsewhere?
I would not want to start 2 tight ends this week. Yeah, I wouldn't want to do that. No.
Don't get too cute.
No, don't get too cute. This is too important. You need somebody in there that's going to get a lot more targets than what a tight end's going to give you. There's only a handful of tight ends that get that many targets. But yeah, no, I wouldn't look at doing that. Absolutely.
Are you rolling out Hunter Henry or TJ Hawkinson, knowing Nick Mullins is throwing the ball?
That's a tough one, man. You might want to look if Hunter Henry, if all things being equal and they're both healthy,
Yep.
I absolutely have no issue with starting Hunter Henry just because he could get a lot more volume than TJ Hawkinson based on JJ being back, Jordan Addison being there, Nick Mullins as the quarterback. Not going to be nearly as many passes coming his way. So, yeah, I have no problem starting Hunter Henry. I mean, really, I think it's a coin toss. The tight ends landscape, it's just so difficult. Hawkinson can come out and have 4 catches and 3 of them be touchdowns this week. That's just how that can work. But I don't mind it. I don't hate it. Don't hate it at all. All right, Frank. Let's look at, let's get to, I don't know. What do you think here, man? Our little hit it and quit it, baby. Let's go.
I want you to hit it.
Okay, Frankie, give me what you got here, man. Give me the good sauce. Give me the sauce. We got our tier 1 starts of the week in 12 to 16 team leagues. Frankie, who do we want to start this week?
John, first and foremost, 12 and 16 man leagues. I'm rolling with that of Trey McBride, tight end for that of Arizona Cardinals, playing against that of Chicago. This dude is rocking and rolling with Kyler Murray, and it has been fun to watch, man. Again, he had 15.2 points against that of San Francisco last week. And then prior to that, man, he had 18.9 against that of Pittsburgh. But what's been more fascinating than anything I've seen, John, is the target share. Going back to week 10. Week 10, right? We're at week 16, guys. So he had 9 targets. Week 11, 7 targets. Week 12 and 13, 9 targets. And week 15, 11 targets, John. This dude is a target monster. Start him in a 12 to 16 man league. Shit, start him in an 8 to 10 man league and pick his ass up in DFS because this is a guy against that of the Chicago Bears, what we just saw in Njoku toast them, right, for the Browns. So I think this is a smash matchup. Starting Trey McBride this week.
I love it. He's the tight end 8 right now, and he really only came into the picture. He was playing less than 50% of snaps until week 8. So that's when Zach Ertz went out. And that's when you start seeing those targets 6, 14, 5, 9, 7, 9, 9, 11. That's a tight end, man.
Tight end.
That's a tight end. So take advantage of the fact that they don't have any good receivers on this team, and they go straight to Trey McBride. Start him up.
John, the next guy here, I'm actually going to roll with Cortland Sutton. 12 to 16 man league. There's a little bit of risk here, guys. No question about it. But the thing is again, he has that connection with Russell Wilson. There's a lot of good stuff happening. He's the number 19 receiver in half PPR. And John, they are playing against a tough defense in that of New England. New England, though, their crux or where they've struggled is actually against the pass. They've been brilliant against the run. And so for me, man, I think that in order for Denver to win this game, which, by the way, they are in the hunt to win their division. The Chiefs are in their division, John. Let me repeat that. The AFC West is wide open, and the Broncos are competing with the Chiefs for potentially winning the division. If the Chiefs drop another, Broncos win, they are tied. So what that means to me is all hands on deck in a must-win game, and you have to feed the ball to your best receiver, which is Cortland Sutton, man. And then you start peeling back the onion a bit. Well, what has he done in the last few weeks? Well, since week 13, John, week 13, he had 15.7 points in FPPR. Week 14, 14.7. And last week, against a very good Detroit team, which, by the way, decimated that of Denver, he still put up 9.6 points with almost double digits there in half PPR, which means that he was over double digits in full PPR. So for me this week, man, I like Cortland Sutton in a larger league, 12 to 16 man.
Love it. He's a touchdown machine, man, constantly. Who else you got?
Number 3 here, man. I'm actually going to roll another little risky play. I'm feeling a little risky. This is the semis, right? So I'm going with a ceiling play of that of Deontay Johnson. Deontay Johnson, with his target share and the way he's being utilized right now, I love it. He's almost quarterback proof at this point in time, whether it was Kenny Pickett, whether it was Mitchell Trubisky. What we're seeing from Deontay Johnson is that George Pickens is absolutely taking the safety, the cornerbacks deep and opening up, right, these slants, these drag routes, things like that. And then with Freiermuth taking away the seam, right, the linebackers, for those wanting to know a little bit more about football, what happens there is the linebacker will drift with the tight end, which opens up the underneath route in front of the linebacker there. And that's where Deontay Johnson is winning, that and the sideline. So for me, man, let's look at what he's done over the last 4 weeks. 8 targets, 5 targets, 7 targets, 6 targets. What does that equate to? In the last 4 weeks, outside of one, he's had double-digit points in half PPR. And since, John, he's come back, he's had more double-digit points. Let me put it like this. Since week 7, he's had double-digit points in every week outside of 3 weeks. So for me, when I talk about a quarterback-proof type of player, this is that type of guy, right? So I'm rolling out Deontay Johnson in a heavy league.
Love it. I love it.
John, the last guy here, and again, this is a bit of a stretch. He's coming off of a injury, but it's due to the matchup and due to the nature of there's still playoff hopes here. And that is Aaron Jones. I'm firing up Aaron Jones in deep leagues. I'm not talking your 8 to 10 man league here, guys. Definitely not. You have better options. But in a 12 to 16 man league, Aaron Jones is very interesting. We saw him finally come back, and he only ran the ball 13 times, John. They definitely limited his play, but he still looked good in a negative game script, right? Because they were down pretty much the entire game. He had 13 rushes for 53 yards against a pretty good Tampa Bay defense. John, that's about 4 yards, a little over 4 yards a carry. And then on top of that, he still had 4 targets for 4 receptions for 16 yards against a Carolina team. I like the upside of Aaron Jones in deep leagues, and AJ Dillon is hurt. And so now I can see Aaron Jones getting even more involved there, right? We saw Kenyon Drake might get called into play, maybe Patrick Taylor a little bit as well. It is Aaron Jones' show. I'm excited to see what happens his second week back from injury.
I'm with you on that one. He's so important to that Green Bay offense, man. He really
Definitely.
is. And they need to get him working this week. Okay, let's look at our tier 2, 8 to 10 team leagues. Frankie, who are we throwing out there? Who do you love?
John, first and foremost, man, it's the guy that I constantly want to kick in the face. I'm not letting that go. I want to kick him right in the fucking face. And you know what? He's been excellent this year. It's Joe Mixon. Joe Mixon at Pittsburgh. What we have seen, you can run the ball against Pittsburgh. Nobody's used to it. I'm certainly not used to it being a Browns fan. They have been dominant for years against the run. This is not one of those years, unfortunately. So for me, man, looking at what Joe Mixon has done over the last 3 weeks, since really week 13, 26.7 points against Jacksonville, 20 points against Indianapolis. And then this past week against Minnesota, 13.6 points. I see that continuing. They still have playoff hopes. And so in a divisional game, they're going to need to rely on Joe Mixon to open up the game for Jacob Browning, knowing that Jamar Chase is more than likely out this week as well, John.
Yeah, he's the number 7 running back on the year, averaging over 14 points a game. I mean, you got to play him there. But yeah, I think recently his usage out of the backfield as far as targets has been increasing too, and it's been very steady. I like that. So I think that's going to be very important, especially with the pass rush, to get around TJ Watt. The number one thing you can do is dump it right over his head, right over to the running back. So look for that. I'm with you. I think Mixon has a very, very good game this week.
Guys, the next dude I'm talking about, I'm starting him over Saquon. I'm starting him over Josh Jacobs. I'm starting him over many of these guys. I might even start him over Derrick Henry, John. It is Rachaad White. Rachaad White has been nothing short of brilliant, of absolute pure brilliant in the last 5 weeks. I mean, honestly, longer than that, but it's been so incredible to see his usage uptick. Johnny's the number 4 running back in half PPR. Rachaad White is the number 4 running back in half PPR. Brilliant, man. And with the way that this team is operating, they're feeding off of him. Rachaad White is the engine that is making this team go. It is not necessarily Baker. It's not necessarily Mike Evans. And it's not necessarily Chris Godwin. It has been Rachaad White, not just the rush, but in the passing and receiving end. Excuse me, not passing, in the reception end and receiving yards. John, he's been awesome. When we look at his game log here, in the last 4 weeks, he had 15 rushes, he had 20 rushes, 25 rushes, 21 rushes. Unbelievable utilization. On top of that, let's go to the receiving end, right? 2 receptions, 5 receptions, 2 receptions, 2 targets, 5 targets, 2 targets, 2 targets. But look at what he's done with the receptions and the targets, John. 10 yards on week 12, or 10 yards, but then it went to 22, 33, and a touchdown, and 50 receiving yards and a touchdown as well. So he's getting it done through the receiving end as well as the rushing end. I see this continuing against a Jacksonville team who has been really raked through the coals from the rushing perspective. So I love Rachaad White. Fire him up anywhere you are able to do so.
He's been absolutely amazing. I mean, just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 of the past 7 weeks, he's been a top 12 running back. I mean, he's just been fantastic, man. He's an auto start right now. He's in your starting lineup no matter what. The guy's been gold, man. Love it. Good for him.
Love that. John, I'm gonna go to the Browns players here. Guys, so remember, this is an 8 to 10 man league. And so this is a tight end play. I'm talking David Njoku. There are people that have reached out to me that said, hey, I'm in an 8-man league. Do I start David Njoku this week? Some weeks I said, probably not, based on who they have. This week, absolutely, man. Since we have seen Joe Flacco really come into the fold outside of that of the Rams game, John, Jacksonville, he's put up 24 fantasy points. Against this past week against Chicago, 22 fantasy points and half PPR. This is a tight end. And then you start looking at, well, what is his target share been? Right? Are these just Hunter Henry to where you're throwing him in the end zone and he's pretty much dominant based on touchdowns at this point? No. John, when we look at what he's done, this is crazy. Over the last few weeks, I'm not even going to go through all of them, but let's just say the last few weeks here, 14 targets, 10 receptions, 8 targets, 6 receptions, right? 6 targets, 2 receptions, 9 targets, 6 receptions, 15 targets, 7 receptions. John, this dude is an auto start in my eyes as well. If you have him or you have the ability to get him, maybe he's on a bench, maybe he's not even playing or whatever it may be in an 8-man league, get him, start him, and enjoy. Flacco is targeting him often.
Gotta love the Chief, man. Gotta love the Chief.
John, the last guy here that I'm rolling with is Deebo motherfucking Samuel. This boy is off and running, dude. I mean, it has been nothing short of incredible since he has come back from that bye week. John, he right now is the 11th overall receiver in half PPR. What we've seen over the last 4 weeks, right? Starting in week 12, he has had, week 12, he was receiver number 9. Week 13, receiver number 2. Week 14, receiver number 1. And week 15, receiver number 9. What does that equate to? 18 points, 36 points, 32 points, 20 points. Domination. Now, again, this is a very difficult matchup against Baltimore, but I see them getting extremely creative again with that of Deebo Samuel. We might see him rushing it a little bit more against a really stout defense to open things up for maybe Brandon Ayuk. Maybe CMC might play a little bit of slot this week. Who knows with Kyle Shanahan? He's a brilliant mind. But what I do know is if you have Deebo Samuel in an 8-man or even a 10-man league, fire him up. It's a must start this week.
I agree. Shannon, I can't wait to see that just to see what they do with him.
It's going to be awesome.
He's kind of the X factor player on their offense that you don't know how they're going to utilize him. How many sweeps are they going to do with him? Are they going to run him in the backfield? Are they going to, throw it deep to him? Really interesting stuff. So I agree with you. I think he's the place where if you're going to attack the offense of the Baltimore Ravens and you're going to confuse the offense, it's a big guy like Deebo that can do it for you. Yep. All right, let's look at some sits here, Frankie. Who do you not like this week?
John, I'm quitting all the Houston receivers against that of Cleveland, right? I mean, CJ Stroud isn't playing. Noah Brown might be the receiver 1, which shout out, man. He actually held it down. He held it down last week. He really did. But the thing is, Denzel Ward is back. Greg Newsome is playing out of his mind. And now you have Martin Emerson Jr., who looks incredible. And then D'Anthony Bell has just been awesome from a safety perspective. So for me, man, Case Keenum playing against that of the Cleveland Browns with the way the defense has been playing, I'm not starting any receiver on that of the Houston Texans.
No, I'm with you on that, man. Not a good week for it.
No. And John, I'm going to actually do one more there because it's another sit. And people might think, well, yeah, no shit. But just in case, I'm sitting Dameon Pierce, right? I had a few people that said, hey, Devin Singletary's definitely taking the lion's share of the load, but, I have Dameon Pierce. I'm a little bit banged up, things like that. Can I still start him? The answer is absolutely not. No, I know your team is injured. I know that there's been some problems. Look on the waiver. Look for a high floor kind of guy or somewhat, maybe a Zamir White even if Josh Jacobs is out. Maybe Ty Chandler, even though I said I'm not rolling with him this week, I'm definitely rolling with him over that of Dameon Pierce. Guys, there's tier to this shit. So yeah, man, look elsewhere. Try to find anything and everything you can do to not start Dameon Pierce this week. It is not a good matchup. John, the next guy is a bit risky, but for me, I'm not willing to put my semifinals on the line. It's Jakobi Meyers. Jakobi Meyers has been pretty damn good, actually very impressive. The problem is they're playing against the Chiefs defense, who is number 7 in the NFL against that of opposing receivers. And so, yeah, Devontae Adams absolutely could open up the floor for Jakobi Meyers to do well. But now with the emergence of Trey Tucker again, is he going to maybe eat into a little bit more of what we're seeing that of Jakobi Meyers? So with that being said, outside of last week, John, yeah, Jakobi Meyers looked good. Yeah, he had 4 targets and he had 32 yards and a touchdown. The touchdown saved him. But the thing is, prior to that, man, you look at what he's done. Prior to that Chargers game, he had 5 points against Minnesota. He had 17 points last time against the Chiefs. So you don't think the Chiefs are going to really be king on that? And then you also have 6 points against that of Miami and 3 points against that of the Jets. So again, it goes back to certainly he could end up popping off. But knowing what he did against the Chiefs last time, if I'm the Chiefs, I'm making sure that he does not do the same. That's why, man, I'm leaning towards sitting him this week.
All right, I'm with you there. Who's your last one here, Frank?
Last one, man, it's actually Javonte Williams. Javonte Williams against that of the New England Patriots. New England has been dominant against that of the run. It is typical Bill Belichick fashion. And also what we've seen against that of a good defense in that of Detroit, he had 3 points, right? 3 fantasy points as a whole against Detroit. John, I don't see him. This is not one that I'm willing to start this week, knowing my semis are on the line. Look elsewhere. He might pop off. He might have a touchdown that salvages the day, maybe get you 11 or 12 points, something like that. But for me, it's too risky. I'm going to go somewhere else that has a little bit higher ceiling.
Yeah, I'm with you exactly. I just don't think there's so much of a ceiling there at all for Javonte, unfortunately. All right, Frank, let's look at some streams here, man. And we kind of touched on a few of these guys, but what do you got as far as a quarterback, a tight end, and a defensive streamer for week 16?
Specifically for week 16, going with Justin Fields here. Justin Fields versus that of Arizona. We came out, we came out and saw DJ Moore after the Cleveland game saying, no, this is our guy. Like Darnell Mooney, this is our guy. Justin Fields has been absolutely balling in terms of NFL play. Again, he played against the stout defense in that of the Cleveland Browns last game. However, his receivers let him down. His tight ends let him down. That wasn't all on Justin Fields. So knowing that he's playing against that of Arizona, we've seen the opposing quarterbacks shred them. So I really like the rushing ceiling that Justin Fields provides, but I also love the matchup for his receivers against this of Arizona. If you have the opportunity, pick him up and use him this week in what might, unless you have a quarterback that's, dominating, etc. But he's a great stream.
I want to see a Tyler Scott touchdown this week.
So bad.
Come on, man. I just want to see a nice 30-yard, right over the shoulder and just watch that speed. By the way, did you see his speed when he caught that pass against the Browns and was tiptoeing up the sideline? I went, oh shit, he's got some juice, man. He's got some juice.
Whoever helped him run a little bit quicker must know a thing or two there. Shout out to big Frank Laurie over there, baby, training these dudes. Right. But yeah, Tyler Scott, man, I'm with you. Great game last week. He had 4 targets, 3 receptions, 49 yards, by far his best game, showed out in front of his home crowd. So it was fun to see, man, for sure.
Yeah, man.
John, for the tight end landscape, guys, there's 2 that really stick out. One is going to be Tucker Kraft at Carolina. with Luke Musgrave going down, Tucker Kraft has been awesome. He's been such a great stream. Jordan Love loves this guy. Definitely firing up Tucker Kraft if you can get him. The second tight end, if Taysom Hill is still banged up, I like Juwan Johnson. Juwan Johnson continues to be the big brute tight end that they can throw up to for a touchdown, things along those lines. If Taysom Hill is still banged up and maybe not playing, you could look to stream that of Juwan Johnson as well.
Yep, he caught a touchdown last week.
Sure did. John, the defenses, I think they're smash plays. I really do. I think both of these are smash plays. Broncos defense versus that of New England, right? I love that. And then Bills at the Chargers. I'm salivating even saying that. Like, I want to put on a Bills jersey because I'm so excited for this defense against this team. John, we talked about it at length that the Chargers, dumpster fire. Bills destroyed. Their defense, man, against Dallas was impeccable. I mean, that was football 101 to a T. You held one of the most high-powered offenses in the NFL to, 10 or 13 points? It was brilliant. I'm rolling with the Bills defense against that of the Chargers for sure.
I love it. Oh, yeah. That's not a defense people have been sitting on. I'm sure that was on the waiver wire.
Totally.
Yeah. Pick that Bills defense up and play them against this putrid team this week. All right. Okay, good. I love the streamers. Thank you, Frankie. Let's look at Thursday night football preview here. We've got the New Orleans Saints at the Los Angeles Rams in SoFi Stadium. Rams are favored by 4 points, over under a 46. Man, I really want to see the Rams in the playoffs. I want to see the Rams in the playoffs. I want to see the Bills in the playoffs. Can we get those two teams in, please? All right, Saints. Talk to me about the Saints, man.
Kamara it's Kamara all day, every day. Love him. Outside of him, John, I know this is a hot take. Unless Chris Olave is playing, I'm not starting any other player unless I need to stream Juwan Johnson or somebody like that. I just don't think for the semis, guys, I'm willing to roll out A.T. Perry. I'm willing to roll out Rashid Shaheed. I'm not willing to put that on display for my team. So for me, man, it's really comes down to Alvin Kamara that I feel super good about. Definitely Chris Olave if he's playing, and then maybe you can stream one of the tight ends.
What about Derek Carr? Is this a guy you can put out there, or is there just not going to be enough pass volume for
John, that floor is so low for Carr. We've seen it. And so that's what makes me nervous. He had a great game last game, for sure. But with that floor being so low, I'm looking elsewhere, man. I could see Aaron Donald just destroying this offensive line, if I'm being honest with you. And the fact that both teams need to win this game in order to win, and it's in LA, I'm just not willing to roll out Derek Carr this week.
Okay. All right. Talk to me about the Rams here. Yeah. Matthew Stafford's been playing out of his goddamn mind, man. I mean,
Awesome.
He's been a smash play. He's been on the cover of our episode for a few weeks here. We've been calling it. We've been right. Doesn't take a genius to figure that out, though. This is not a smash play for Matthew Stafford, though. He's been playing excellent. He seems healthy. New Orleans pass defense is very good. It is good.
Yeah.
But I just think with the talent around him and with the coaching, they really seem to be hitting their stride, this team. This team seems red hot right now. And when a team's red hot like that, I like staying in the flames with the quarterback. Do you think you can stream or start Matthew Stafford this week?
Yeah, I do. And I know this is a tough matchup, and it goes against like some of the things that we've said previously in terms of, well, if a matchup, man, do you really want to, more of a lower floor kind of guy? What we're seeing from Matthew Stafford is his floor isn't that low. Since the bye week, John, it's been actually pretty high. And he's played against some really good teams like that of Baltimore, like that of Cleveland, like that of even the Dallas Cowboys or Pittsburgh, for example. Right. So for me, man, they're a tried and true team that have played against some dominant teams. And for me, I'm firing him up. I'm starting Matthew Stafford this week, and I'm actually going to put my money where my mouth is, and I'm doing it. I'm actually doing it in my fantasy football semifinals. So yeah, love Matthew Stafford. John, you're firing up Cooper. You're firing up Puka. You're firing up Kyron. And honestly, you might even be able to fire up Tyler Higbee, depending on, what your situation looks like from a tight end. If you need kind of a flyer as well, maybe some of the other guys that we mentioned are not available from a streaming perspective. Maybe Tyler Higbee is. That's a guy as well that you might be able to take a flyer on from a tight end perspective.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it could be difficult for Puka Nacua this week. They do just with the pass off defense that New Orleans has. I think it could definitely be a Cooper Cup smash play this week. I could see him getting like 10 targets this week. Could be very interesting. Kyron Williams, the guy's been awesome. The guy has been a stud. Start him, play him, enjoy it. Yeah. All right. Anything else on this game, Frank?
No, we're good here.
All right. We're good here. Well, let's touch on real quick. We got a couple of Saturday games. I know we're going long, guys, but just one episode this week, and it's Christmas. Merry Christmas. Saturday games here, Frankie. AFC North showdown. Cincinnati Bengals at the Pittsburgh Steelers. Bengals favored by 2. Over under a 37. Not expecting a lot of scoring out of this game here. What do you think, though? We talked a little bit. You love Joe Mixon. We talked about T. Higgins. We love him. Not so big on Tyler Boyd, like you said before. Okay, what about the Steelers here? You love Deontay Johnson.
Yep.
Talk about the rest.
Yeah, I mean, John, this is interesting, right? Because I'm not willing to roll out George Pickens this week. No way. No way. After what we've seen, the turmoil that's happened. So I'm sitting him. Definitely willing to, as long as he's healthy, I'm willing to fire up Freiermuth. Again, he's been kind of hot and cold, so it hasn't been a grand slam of a start, but he's definitely somebody that I would put in the mix there to start my tight end spot. Now, here's the interesting thing. Are we rolling with Jaylen Warren? Or are we rolling with Najee Harris? And John, one of them are going to perform against this Cincinnati team. We saw what Ty Chandler did, right? We saw teams run against that of the Cincinnati Bengals. And so it's going to be one of these guys. And so for me, we don't know. Mason Rudolph's at the helm. We haven't seen it. We haven't seen Mason Rudolph this year at the helm with Jaylen Warren, right? First and foremost. And secondly, with Najee Harris. And so pick your poison. I mean, flip a coin. I'm rolling with one of them. I would probably lean slightly, ever so slightly, maybe to that of Jaylen Warren, just because if they're down, they might need to do some check downs. They might need to get him going in the pass game. But that's strictly speculation. If you have Najee, I'm probably firing him up. If you have Jaylen Warren in a deeper league, I'm probably firing him up and saying a prayer. But John, what are your thoughts, man, on these two backs? This is tough.
It is tough. It truly is 50-50. And, just as Jaylen Warren was taking the job, they fired Matt Canada, and the new offensive coordinator loves Najee.
Yeah.
So it really is 50-50. I mean, it depends on what are they going to specifically draw up a play for any of these guys. You really just need to have one of these guys hit a big play. I think Jaylen Warren has the more opportunity and the more, I think he has the best chance of breaking that 50-yard run. Jaylen Warren does than Najee, but Najee's played very well. I was this close to being out on Najee forever, and then he's been revived. So I think it's unlikely you've got both of these guys. I think if you have both of these guys, I think the upside play, the higher ceiling could potentially be Jaylen Warren with the receiving or with the big play ability. But if you've got either of these guys, I think you can play them both. I really do. I mean, I think it's going to be tough to expect a ton out of these guys with this offense. I just don't think this offense is going to do a lot this week. But they're going to run the ball. They're going to get some opportunity. So I think you can play them both. I think.
Cross the fingers.
Cross the fingers, baby. Yeah. All right, let's look at the other game here. Buffalo Bills at the LA Chargers. Wow, this game. Buffalo is favored by 11.5 points of the 44-point over/under. Whew. Okay, Let me ask a simple question here with the Chargers. We'll start there. Is there anyone you are willing to start for the Chargers this week to get you to your Super Bowl?
In a deep league, John, I'm willing, with injuries there, and if Keenan Allen is out, there's a lot of factors. Josh Palmer, potentially. That is definitely one. Gerald Everett, another tight end that absolutely could see some serious volume from Easton Stick, knowing they're probably going to be down, knowing that they're going to put him in a position to throw the ball quite often. So I like that. John, the question is Austin Eckler. Do you start Austin Eckler? If you have him, in my opinion, if he plays, you have to start him. More than likely, you don't have truly a better option. Now, if you're sitting there staring at Austin Eckler in an 8 to 10 man league against X, Y, and Z, I'm going with X, Y, and Z, right? I just am. But if you're in a deeper league, I think you have to still start Austin Eckler unless he is not playing. I mean, it's not a sexy start. It is a risk, and it is your semifinals. But the upside of Eckler is so large that he could end up coming back and saying, you know what, screw you. I'm playing for a contract anyways. I'm out of the Chargers. I know I'm not going to be here. So whatever, I'm going to play and show you why I deserve to be on another team. That could end up being it. Or we could end up seeing them saying, screw you to Austin Eckler and saying, we're going to run Isaiah Spiller and see what we got, and Josh Kelly and see what we got. So it's really tough, man. So, but I would say I would probably still start Eckler if he is playing.
I'm worried about it. I mean,
yeah, me too.
I know our buddy on YouTube, Gabriel, always gives us these crazy ass start sits, with a 10-man league, and Austin Eckler's always in that group. It seems like. I don't think I'm playing him, man. I'm really concerned about this. Austin Eckler is not going to be on the team next year. That it's not going to happen. Why would he want to play? Why would he want to risk injury? He doesn't have anything to prove. Everyone knows who Austin Eckler is. He doesn't have to go out there and like Justin Fields and say, I need to show that I can ball. I need to make sure that I play because I'm auditioning for a team. I don't think he is, man. I think he's just kind of lost in the fold, and he's probably looking at it saying, these motherfuckers are going to run me to the ground if I play. I don't think I want to do this, for his own career. I'd be very, very nervous about Austin Eckler just because of the situation.
I'm with you. It's tough. It's sticky. It's gross. It's truly in the air, man.
All right, let's look at the Bills here, man. I mean, the Bills, Stephon Diggs, since the change of the offensive coordinators here, the receivers, they're Gabe Davis, 0, 0, 0, 0. I mean, he's just not boom bust anymore. He's just bust.
He's just bust.
Stephon Diggs, I mean, they have not been just featuring these guys in the pass game at all. It's been so run heavy. James Cook might be the league winner this year, man. I mean, just absolute smash play. James Cook has been fantastic. He's averaged over 140 yards in the past 3 games. I mean, come on, man. Just craziness. Now, one thing I do want to touch on is, are you worried about Stephon Diggs? And I want to talk about Dalton Kincaid for a minute. So touch on Stephon Diggs here. Are you playing him? Is he an auto start?
For me, I'm still riding the flames with Stephon Diggs. His ceiling is too high. What Josh Allen, John, threw for 94 yards last week, and he didn't even need to do it. He didn't even need to be the guy to win. This week, it could be some of the same. That's what makes me a little bit nervous. But I still think you got to start Stephon Diggs in your semifinals. The ceiling is there. The upside is there. This team, I mean, he could score on the first play of the game. That is how dynamic Stephon Diggs is with Josh Allen. So I am definitely still starting Stephon Diggs. Now, the question is Dalton Kincaid. John, no, I'm not starting Dalton Kincaid this week. He's a little bit banged up. He has a questionable tag as it is. On top of it, Dawson Knox is back. We told people last week, after him being one of our starts a few weeks before, to sit him last week because Dawson Knox was back and that he was a little bit banged up. Well, he had 0 points. He had 2 targets and 0 receptions. So, John, I don't like it this week. He was, he's banged up. You have so much competition to get this ball now. And let's assume, what happens if the Bills do run away with this? You think that they're really going to be throwing the ball that much? So there's higher ceiling plays and honestly, safer floor plays than that of Dalton Kincaid this week. And so when I'm thinking about, okay, if I'm playing, and this is a real life example, if I'm playing Stephon Diggs on one team and I also have Dalton Kincaid as my tight end, John, I'm not rolling both of those guys out this week because of the ability for them to just trounce that of the Chargers. And so for me, man, I'm totally looking elsewhere from a tight end perspective as a whole. I'm not even willing to start Dawson Knox or Dalton Kincaid this week.
Yeah. No, Dalton Kincaid, I don't think you can start him right now. I mean, you look at his utilization, and since the change with the offensive coordinators, they've been focusing way more on the run. And with them focusing on the run, Dalton Kincaid is not that great of a pass blocker or a run blocker.
Right.
He's a little smaller frame. He's the receiver. He's totally. Basically a receiver at tight end. Dawson Knox is the bigger bodied guy. He's the guy who's great on the run blocking. So I think that's why you're going to see a lot of 12 personnel. That's why you're seeing Dawson Knox rather than Dalton Kincaid. And I think that continues this week. They're not going to have to throw a lot of the ball here, man. They're going to run the ball quite a bit. Now, that's a good question here is that, can you start any of the other running backs, Latavius Murray or Damian Harris?
And it's just, No, I'm not willing to do that. Again, if we're talking a normal week, not playoffs, yeah, why not give it a try? If you need to, injuries, maybe you had Keaton Mitchell, maybe you were banking on him, maybe you were banking on another running back that, Josh Jacobs, maybe that's been banged up and out. So for me, man, no, this week though, absolutely not. The way James Cook is being utilized, and yeah, he has a sickness, so all this stuff, he's a little bit ill, he was away from practice, but again, it doesn't matter. He's going to play. I know he's going to, I don't know that definitively, but I can tell you that from pure speculation that he's more than likely going to play. And what we've seen, he's been brilliant. He's been absolutely brilliant. And so, no, I'm not willing to look at Damian Harris or that of Latavius strictly because A, volume, and B, it's the semis. Put your best players in and let them rock. This is not a time to go for a really cute play just because you think they're going to jack up the score, right? We've seen crazier things happen, John. We've seen the Cleveland Browns beat the 49ers with PJ Walker. We have seen, right, massive upsets. Who's to say that Easton Stick doesn't come out and say, fuck you to the Bills? And now, right, we have something crazy happening and now they got to throw the ball. It's not likely. It's not even probable. But what I'm saying is it's the NFL. Any given Sunday, anything crazy can happen. And so, we just saw Drew Lock beat the Eagles. Who would have seen that coming? So again, what I'm getting at is, no, I'm not willing to start Latavius or Damian Harris for a variety of reasons that I named. Go with your best players. This is the week to do it.
I love it. Thank you so much, everybody. That is our show for this week. Good luck to you in your semifinals. I want to see some Frankly Fantasy Championships out there. Let's go. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram at Frankly Fantasy Football, and you're watching us right now on YouTube. Thank you so much. Please, if you haven't, please subscribe, comment, share, like, all of that shit. You push all those buttons, it really helps our channel, guys, and you've really helped us out this year all season long. We really appreciate it. And please listen, Spotify, Apple, Google Play, everywhere podcasts are found. Please subscribe to that as well. Help us boost some numbers in there as well. Okay, guys. Frankie, what are we looking at for next week, man?
Guys, we're going to be diving in to get you ready for your Super Bowl push. You want some money? You want to smell that and be like, oh yeah, I just spent a shit ton on Christmas. I better backfill that. You want to go and just hammer that around? Well, you better tune in because we're going to be diving in. We're going to give you the best fantasy advice we can absolutely provide. And I promise you, you're going to have a fun time doing it.
All right. Good luck, everybody. Have a great week. Happy and safe holidays to everybody this week. Hopefully Santa can bring you a championship next week, huh? All right. May the fantasy gods smile upon you. Bye.